A very warm good morning and welcome to this high-level regional dialogue on the call of Cryosphere. With an urgent and crucial agenda ahead of us, I would like to kick off today's event, which is focused on the critical issues surrounding the mountains in general, but the Cryosphere in particular in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. My name is Babar Khan. I'm working as Senior Ecosystem Management Specialist at ICIMOD, and I also look after the action area on regional data, networks, and institutions. I have the honor and privilege to moderate this August event. I'm sure many of you probably know about the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, which is known for its unique cultures, biodiversity, and water resources. With approximately 0.76 million square kilometers of snow on average, 60,000 square kilometers of glaciated area, and an estimated 6,000 cubic kilometers of ice reserves, the cryosphere is an important part of the Hindu Kush Himalaya's water supply system. Observed and projected changes in the cryosphere affect the timing and magnitude of stream flows across the region. Snow-covered areas and snow volumes are predicted to decrease in many areas over the coming decades due to increased temperatures, changing precipitations, and snow cover dynamics. ICIMOD is a regional intergovernmental knowledge organization which is committed to supporting its 8 regional member countries, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, to help them address the issues and challenges emerging from the climate and cryosphere crisis through knowledge, innovation, policy, and partnership pathways. However, most of the Hindu Kush Himalayas challenges are complex and transboundary, and their impacts and risks often transcend national boundaries, which need a regional collaborative approach, an evidence-based solution package, and the investment at scale. Today's event, therefore, aims to share with you the key findings of the ICIMOD's latest report on water, ice, society, and ecosystems in the Hindu Kush Himalaya, which we shortly call HIVICE Outlook Report 2023. We also aim to broaden our understanding of the impacts of the changing cryosphere on water resources, ecosystems, and people, both in the mountains and downstream areas. We look forward to furthering and strengthening our collaboration with the HKH countries and the HKH countries among themselves, and in particular with the global research and development partners for sustainable climate action and building resilience in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. Without going into technical details of the study, I would like to begin a journey of understanding of what is happening in the cryosphere and HKH and how it is impacting people's lives, biodiversity, and the ecosystems. I would like to invite Dr. Pam Narayan-Kadal, Chief Policy Advisor at ICIMOD, to extend a warm welcome to the delegates on behalf of Dr. Pema Gyamshu, the Director General of ICIMOD. Dr. Kadal.
Thank you. Good morning. Distinguished delegates from the regional member countries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So we have also Jira from FCDO, welcome. So It is our great pleasure to welcome you all in this high-level regional dialogue on the call of the Cryosphere, disappearing snow and ice in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Dr. Babar has already set the context, therefore I don't like to talk much about Hindu Kush Himalaya and ICIMOD. You know that Hindu Kush Himalaya is very largest contiguous mountain, Himalaya. So the most contiguous largest mountain of the planet. So it provides a lot of ecosystem service, water, energy, and food, nearly to the 2 billion people of the planet. So about one fourth of the humanity of the planet. So how it is important. So that is the important message that we have to understand. So ICIMOD, International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, is knowledge, learning, and innovative center. Work with the 8 member country, as Dr. Bauer has mentioned, for the sustainable mountain development. So it is very important. So SKS region is the most vulnerable to climate change because of the two reasons. Mainly two reasons are there. Number one, fragile topography and weak socioeconomic context. That is why this region is the most vulnerable to climate change. And it is also important to note that snow and ice of the Hindu Kush Himalaya maintain supply of seasonal fresh water to river basin that serve, as I already mentioned, 2 billion people in Asia. But current emission trend and resultant warming is causing glacier to shrink rapidly, posing severe threat to the region's ecosystem and community. So this is the key challenge. Recent ICIMOD report that will be presented on water, ice, society, and ecosystem in Hindu Kush Himalaya otherwise reveal that this region has already witnessed 65% faster melting of snow and glacier than previous decades, leading to an increased frequency of water-induced, climate-induced hazards and disaster. So this is the big threat to the region. And a current emission trend, it is foreseen that two-thirds of all our glaciers will be gone by 2100. So we'll lose all the glacier and snow. Then there will be big deficit of water in the downstream. In this context, aims of this meeting is to share the latest result of the dramatic change in the cryosphere in the SKS, build understanding of the impact of climate change on water, ice, society, and ecosystem resources in the SKS region, and forge collaboration among SKS countries, regional and international partnership, and promote the need for sustainable climate action in the SKS. So the impact is very big. Therefore, we'd like to collaborate with the international community. So this is the main objective. We know that you all are very busy. We are very busy with at COP28, particularly with the negotiation, final negotiation process. I see our colleague from Nepal and Bhutan and other regional member country. They are very kind of stressed to include their agenda and to talk and participate in the negotiation. But this dialogue could be the helpful in negotiation process to provide the evidence about the melting of mountain cryosphere and its impact. So mountain and cryosphere are our agenda of Hindu Kush Himalaya region. So therefore, it is important. This dialogue would help you for during your negotiation. Our expert team is presenting the report, and we have James from International Center Climate and Cryosphere Initiative, ICCI, advocating about cryosphere, importance of cryosphere. He will be presenting on global perspective of cryosphere. So without any delay, I would like to welcome you all again in this important dialogue. So thank you for coming and participating from the regional member country, from FCDO, from ICCI and other part of the world. So I welcome you all in this important dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pam, for a very warm welcome. As Dr. Pam said, now we have 3 presentations queued up for this session. Our first presenter is Dr. Arun Bafta Shrestha. Yeah, before that, we have to start with the video. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for reminding me. I had to skip it. Luckily, we have a very young filmmaker, an actor, and a producer with us, Jamyang Wangchuk from Bhutan. Many of you probably have seen him in the films and documentaries, but he is here with us now, and he is here with a key message from the summit and summit of the Mount Everest, and from base camps of other highest mountain peaks in the world, including some in Pakistan and other in Nepal, with the message that how fast the glaciers are melting there. He has cycled all the way from Bhutan through India, Pakistan to Dubai to shed some light on his crucial journey from Mount Everest to Dubai. I would like to show the video first, and then I will request Jamyang for your brief remarks, please. Can we run the video, please?
I'm taking a huge risk right now, carrying this bike to Tortomi Glacier. And I say risk because right after we get back from Lunana, we embark on the main campaign, which is to ride from the east to the west of Bhutan. Bhutan now has to contend with the looming danger of hundreds of glacial lakes that did not exist 20 years ago. So the plastic bottle stands for plastic pollution, the waste problem that's plaguing not only Bhutan, but all over the world. And the meltwater from Tortomi, it represents rapidly melting glaciers, disappearing glaciers due to global warming. Especially, we are vulnerable because we live in a mountainous country.
미토이 팔레 지날레 태명할래 지나이 주주스둘라 지나이 주주 알루팜답 어머갈래 초하나 히스둘라 아내바 땜다바 짐다난다스둘라
Yalama çoğumda ava zırsı hibda kati jonna masibala tingale tinginam chugudi pha jakholesu zona chu se koibala chemcham thang sa zona ta chobda ava hip tingare update chi de na ha wonde te aldi khogi ba ngach phalebe wonda den chudi pura nalama oi matala cheka analama pegoi la tele cheka di phalo me ngachi yalama kirigi sa popo yobola ani kirigi sa popo gi ana hipchi malegi chudi yata omne chala ana zongi su kholebeya Analmaydı mabeyşon, ngati kirigi yagutugu şöpçi, nagi çuda magi çudi katıp çabışon, samçı atara anel. Çukuçi. Yani samdida midir di bagjo metela. Sampuk bayasla anel.
In 2008, the water level had to be lowered manually by people. They worked here for months and months in very harsh conditions. And they were able to lower 5 meters. Currently, this is the most potentially dangerous lake in Bhutan. The constitution of Bhutan decrees that every citizen is a trustee of the environment. As a trustee, I will carry this bottle with me as a symbolic message for climate action and cycle across Bhutan, stopping in schools and colleges along the way to talk to the students about the climate crisis and the importance of preserving our natural environment. We are cycling from Pemagasil all the way to Thimphu through 15 districts to create awareness, especially among the youth. This campaign is not a one-off project where we finish once the campaign ends in Bhutan. Yearly, annually, there is a huge meeting of all the world leaders. They gather and they talk about the climate crisis and how to adapt and mitigate. From Thimphu, we will be biking, cycling all the way to Dubai. We would like to take this message and tell the world leaders of what's happening to poor countries like Bhutan who have had no impact on the climate crisis. And yet we are suffering its consequences.
Dear world leaders, our nature, it's disappearing. It's going away day by day. If there's no nature, there is no tomorrow. It is going to affect my life. It is going to affect everyone's life, even my grandchildren's life. And we're just standing here. We're worrying about it, but we're not taking any actions.
So my first key message is to stop deforestation and plant trees and protect old growth forests. The second key message is transition to renewable energy. And the third key message is, of course, if we could make climate change, the climate crisis studies part of our curriculum. Thank you, sir. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There are about 300 million people living near the rivers and the glaciers, and 1.6 billion people living downstream. So it's 1.9 billion people that will be impacted by disappearing glaciers.
Sarujuya mindumo, Nyerunia mindumo, Churitir bitake, Tabuna bulangobe, Churitir bitake, Tabuna bulangobe.
There is still time to walk a path towards a future that sustains us all. It begins with all of us. Let our voices echo from the roof of the world through the halls of power, demanding action and change. Let us be the catalysts of transformation as we embark on this mission to save our snow.
Thank you, Jamyan, for all this tremendous effort. May I now request you to tell us something about the story of your journey of a messenger from the rooftop to the plans of the way here? Jamyan, please.
Thank you all for being here, and I'll make this really quick. So I biked this time from Nepal because I'd already biked in the summer while doing the Everest trek. I resumed the campaign from Nepal to New Delhi, and unfortunately, due to an injury I sustained just before the campaign, I couldn't continue cycling. So I hopped onto the train to the Pakistan-India border, and from there I took two buses to get to Karachi, and then from Karachi I flew here. So in this journey, I've seen for myself the connection between the mountains and the plains, especially in Pakistan, where I visited the area that was fully submerged. One district called Khaipur Nathansha that was fully submerged under the floods last year. And as soon as I got out and took my camera out, the residents there, the locals, they swarmed me, and I was really taken aback. They were looking for answers from me, and one of them said, "We still haven't received aid ration after 3 weeks, and we're still looking for that." And they showed us where they were living in tents, in makeshift tents, a year on from the devastation. So this journey has, in a sense, given the campaign a renewed sense of urgency and how and what it means to the communities being impacted by it. And I'm very grateful here for this opportunity to share this message here with the community here and share the campaign with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamyan. Thank you so much. Now, without wasting the time, I would like to invite Dr. Arun Bafta-Shirista, Strategic Group Lead for Reducing Climate and Environmental Risks, which we call the SG3, and the Senior Climate Change Specialist, for sharing the key findings of the recent study of ICIMOD on Himalayan water, ice, society, and ecosystems. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you, Babarji. I After that video and short speech from Jangmyang, I think it's probably not even necessary to go through it, because in essence, the whole thing is about trying to understand how societies are impacted, and I think we it's clear. But nevertheless, I will go through this very high level summary of overview of this report, which came out earlier this year, which was a work of about 74 renowned author, from the region as well as international. So uh, um, of course, this is the reason the report covers. If you have been following ICIMOD's work, we have been talking about 10 major river basins originating from Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Here we have added two, which are not like the big major river basin, but Helmand and Inner Tibet. That makes it 12. And of course, the importance of this region in terms of the people living there and the vulnerability has been mentioned by PMG. So I'll not go into that. And yes, the Highwise report, which stands for um, ice, water, society, and ecosystem, looks at those the interlinkages. Of course, the focus is on cryosphere change, but then how it is linked with water, ecosystem, and society. So that's what it brings in, but also talks about the knowledge gap and some very important policy messages. So starting from ice, the glacier is the most talked about component of cryosphere. Um, we of course know that it is melting very rapidly due to climate change, due to warming. What is alarming is this report reveals that in the decade of 2010, the melt rate has actually, the mass loss has actually accelerated by around 65% more than in the previous decade. One additional information here. I think the Karakoram anomaly has been much discussed. Some glaciers, very high level, high altitude glaciers in Karakoram advancing. But then this report also indicates that probably the Karakoram anomaly is now going to end or has already ended. So I think even in that area, the ice loss is going to be the major trend. So looking into the future, that was about the past. Looking into the future, different scenarios, global warming scenarios, indicate the what would happen to the glaciers in this region. So again, in a 1.5 degree to 2 degree world, the end of the century glacier loss scenario could be something about 30 to 50% loss and by the end of the century compared to 2015. So that is already very, very serious. And we are talking about 1.5 degree or 2 degree or maybe not, maybe yes. So this is going to be very detrimental. And if it is 3 degree, it would be around 55 to 70% loss. So and it also depends on the location, but generally that's what we are looking at, which is really, really serious. Again, very significant, decline in snow cover. The pattern is likely to change. Snow line elevation suggested to, shift. More rain than snow suggested to happen. And also already we are experiencing this rain on snow effect, which is also very, very critical for, runoff processes. Permafrost is another component, the third component of cryosphere, which is the least studied. We know very little about it. What we know points to the fact that permafrost is also declining very, very rapidly. And much of the slope instabilities, mass wasting, could be due to permafrost, especially a few of those events we are already seeing. And this needs to be really, really understood as we move forward. Now about water, right? I think, okay, cryosphere is changing, but then water is what is central to the society. But then the picture, the story about water is not that clear. What will happen to our water resources, is very, very, uncertain. At the headwaters, probably, there will be increase till the tipping point, and then there will be a decline. So that is something which we know. But then as we move downstream, it will be important in river basins which are predominantly meltwater fed, like Helmand, Amudarya, and Indus. However, the eastern river basins, which are more monsoon fed, probably impacts are likely to be less. But then what we are also seeing is that the seasonality shift is going to be very important, and changes in the extremes are likely to be very important. And hazards, I think that is very important also. While we talk about water, it is not only about too little water, also too much water is also very, very can be harmful. Now, this region is a multi-hazard prone region. And of course, the perception is that the hazard, frequency magnitude is increasing. That's perception, but in terms of the data itself speaking, we have low confidence on it, right? Of course, the data issue is there, but what we see from talking to communities and our own experience shows that these are increasing. Um, but the exposure is increasing. I think that's for sure. The settlements, the infrastructure, all the activities are increasing. So even with a constant hazard, I think the risk factor is increasing here. And also the nature, multi-hazards occurring, cascading hazards occurring. This is something which we are observing quite frequently in the region. One important aspect of hazard is glacier lake outburst flood, which is related to climate change and which is related to glacier melting. Now, the record in terms of the trend in glacier lake outburst flood is limited. What we have recorded in last 150 or so years, there have been around more than 400 glacier lake outburst flood events in this region. And if we look at the high mountain Asia, it could go as high as 600, right? So that is there. But what we also found out that, looking into the future, uh, by the end of the century, there could be a threefold increase in Gulf events. That is really, really scary. However, it seems like tipping point has been reached in the eastern part of the Himalaya, right? Although there will be Gulf events, more and more glacier lake formation increase will happen in the western part of Hindu Kush Himalaya. So that's something which we have found. Now, this is about cryosphere and water. In terms of ecosystem, again, this report highlights that there will be major changes in mountain flora, for example, in phenology, habitat shift, population and communities, etc., and also in fauna elevation shift, sharp population decline, extinction of some of the species, etc., which is definitely not my topic. Actually, I'm not expert in it, but this is what we are finding. Now, finally, moving into the societal aspect, and we were talking, Gerard, before this session that uh, this is where the importance is, right? We want to know, we want to establish better understanding because it is about society, it is about livelihoods directly through water supply, through disaster, through agricultural system, and also, cultural and spiritual well-being is very important. So, but then when it comes to society, everything becomes very, very complex. You cannot really, directly relate how cryosphere and society are interlinked. So this is an area where we definitely need to increase our work. What we found from our this report is that adaptation actions are predominantly autonomous, and therefore we really need to increase the policies in this area. right? Sustainable mountain development, and there are a lot of gaps. As I said, it is a very complex area, so there is a very big need to conduct further work on it, putting Cryosphere at the center, but looking at it from a interdisciplinary angle, interlinking Cryosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, and society is something which we really need to do, which can actually inform the adaptation angles, right? So this has been started in this highways report, but we also feel that there is a lot of need to strengthen this aspect. So with that, I will end this short presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arun, for sharing the key findings of the Highwise report. ICIMOD being a regional knowledge and learning center, it co-generates very critical and credible information together with its partners to fill the key knowledge gaps in areas we lack knowledge, to support the policy and decision-making processes, particularly in our regional member countries, but generally also as to support the research around the globe focused on mountains. ICIMOD has established a proper mechanism of taking the key knowledge to the policy makers. And I will try to present very briefly how we are taking that knowledge to the policy processes. I hope I can use this one. Yeah, great. The process of linking science with the policy started actually a long time ago, but it was very formally started in 2020 with the publication of the flagship report we call Hindu Kush Himalaya Assessment Report. It was published in 2019. The key findings of that report were then converted into the HKH call to action as a commitment by the governments of the 8 regional member countries. And this commitment was formally endorsed by the ministers from the 8 regional member countries in the first ministerial mountain summit held in October 15, 2020, where they agreed to hold a biannual Hindu Kush Himalaya Ministerial Mountain Summit and to promote a united voice for the Hindu Kush Himalaya region at forums like this at the global level and regional level also. But specifically, they suggested and agreed to hold a multi-stakeholder science policy forum regularly to enhance the uptake of science evidence for improving regional policies focused on mountaineering, particularly related to people, as Dr. Arun mentioned. When it comes to the society, it becomes even more complex and needs a lot of attention to address them. And environment, because environment is actually the source of livelihood of the mountain people. Not only for mountain people, but services also benefit the people living downstreams, even the economies, industries, etc. They also suggested to establish a high-level regional institutional mechanism, and ICIMOD was assigned the role of secretariat for it. That's why ICIMOD is facilitating this entire process. After the first Science Policy Forum, the second Science Policy Forum was organized in Kathmandu just 2 months ago, and where some of you were also present there. And this forum, which was attended by over 100 participants, including scientists, researchers, development professionals, representatives of other global mountain networks like Alpine Convention, Carpathian Convention, South Caucasus region, East Africa, Andes, etc., and Central Asian mountains, together with the policymakers from the region, from the 8 regional member countries, to discuss the key findings of this Highwise report there. what this report says about the changes happening in the cryosphere and its impacts on people, on livelihoods, on biodiversity and ecosystems, and the most critical resource, which is water of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, how it is being affected, and what we need to do in terms of policies and practices. At the end of the two-day Science Policy Forum, the participants, through an extensive consultation process, came up with the evidence-based recommendations on managing cryosphere risks in the region. They agreed to form a high-level technical committee on cryosphere to set and guide the research agenda on cryosphere for the HKH region. Specifically, they recommended to set up a working group, which should be comprising of the lead cryosphere scientists from the region to generate the knowledge which is essential but lacking so far about the cryosphere and its linkages with other sectors important for the mountain people and downstream communities. They propose to co-develop a regional cryosphere research and monitoring strategy. Each country in the region has its own monitoring stations, normally based on findings from and data from these stations. They develop their own programs and projects, but we need to work together at the regional level to share data, to look into the risks and impacts which are beyond the national boundaries. Develop a data sharing system. Whatever these data stations, either climatic or discharge stations, whatever data comes from these stations need to be shared formally, properly at a regional level to see the regional implications of the changing climate and particularly the changing cryosphere. They suggested to collaborate with member states and development partners to devise investment strategies. This is, I think, the main area of the whole COP28, where we need investment and finances, not only from the public sector, but also from the private sector to look into these challenges and come together to address them in a way that is needed. Since when we talk of climate change, obviously gender, particularly women, children, disabled, disadvantaged groups, they are among the biggest sufferers of the climate change impacts. So one of the recommendations was to be pragmatic, inclusive, and gender responsive to address such issues. Obviously, the regional member countries of ICIMOD and our member states and partners from these countries need capacity building in terms of human resources, but also in terms of data sharing and technology transfer also for implementation on the plans and programs about cryosphere. Further, to go for action on these recommendations, the ministerial summit has proposed in the first ministerial summit, the ministers have agreed also to organize a ministerial mountain summit every 2 years. So we are now bound to present these key recommendations with details required to the next ministerial summit, which is planned to be held on 5th of March 2024, next year. We are hoping that based on the discussion in the ministerial summit, we will come up with a regional agreement on cryosphere to protect the risks of cryosphere, to protect the people and environment of the region from cryosphere risks collectively in the HKH region. Thank you. May I now request James Kirkham, AMI Chief, Science Advisor, and the Coordinator for ICCI, for a global perspective on the cryosphere. James, please.
Thank you, Baba, and thank you to ICIMOD. It's always a pleasure to share the floor with you. And
the time I spent working with you in 2017, 2018 fostered a real fire and passion for this region, which I've taken forward to each and every single one of my conversations here at this COP. So thank you so much. I'm going to be extremely blunt with you today and prove to you that no matter who you are, where you're from, your nation's national security, the future of your food and water, and the health of your population depend on one thing, and this is the cryosphere. And for the cryosphere, every single 1/10 of a degree matters. So let's be really clear here. This year has been absolutely devastating for the cryosphere. We're seeing enormous changes and impacts, even at 1.2 degrees, and there's absolutely no debate to be had anymore. 2 degrees is simply too high, and even 1.5 degrees will still lead to huge, irreversible impacts that will last for centuries. It's by no means a safe level at all, but perhaps 1.5 will allow us to adapt to this if we act today. Now, this is because the cryosphere is warming faster than anywhere else in the world. The Arctic is currently warming 4 times the global rate, and Antarctica and the Hindu Kush Himalaya are warming about twice the global average. And this means that whilst the Earth is now warmed by 1.2 degrees overall, we're now heating the cryosphere with temperatures that are already 2 or 3 degrees more than they were in the 1980s. So let's just have a quick whistle-stop tour of our cryosphere. We have ice sheets. We have 2 on Earth, Antarctica and Greenland. And if all the ice held in these ice sheets were to melt, sea levels would rise by 65 meters. Now, these videos show how these 2 ice sheets have changed just over the last 20 years, and areas of red are where they're losing more ice than where they're gaining. The loss of ice from these ice sheets has caused sea level to rise by over 20 centimeters over the last century, and this is now causing your countries billions of extra dollars in damage with every single storm you're having. But if we keep going under our current emissions pathway, we'll be talking about meters of sea level rise, not centimeters. Of course, this would have huge impacts for countries all the way around the world. So 1 meter is now locked in, no matter what we do under any emission scenario. But we've still got our foot on the accelerator, and we can choose whether this water comes really fast or we can slow it down and adapt to it. Currently, today, our foot is flat to the floor. And this means that 1 meter could occur in the next 50 years. And for countries like Bangladesh, this would cause massive coastal migration and also big challenges to agriculture because of saltwater intrusion spoiling the soil. But things would get much, much worse than this. So 3 meters could happen in the early 2100s under our current emission scenario. And this would cause almost unthinkable damage to coastal cities around the world, including, for example, Karachi in Pakistan. As well as this, we've got Shanghai in China. This is massively affected by sea level rise, potentially very quickly. And also Mumbai in India. And of course, not to mention that at this level, low-lying nations like the Bahamas will be almost entirely gone. So moving on to mountain glaciers and snow then, which is, to be honest, one of the most important water resources in the entire planet. Today, at least 2 billion people rely on the snow and ice here for water, drinking water, irrigation, sanitation, and electricity production. Anything above 1.5 degrees will result in the almost complete loss of glaciers in the European Alps, Scandinavia, the Andes, and New Zealand. Some loss, as you can see in both of these animations, is now committed, no matter what we do. But the outcome towards the end of this century is still to be decided. Delaying mitigation will result in more loss and damage, greater instability, and less time to adapt to our changing mountains. Now, moving on to high mountain Asia, where the Indus and the Tarim river basins rely almost entirely on meltwater from snow and ice during the hot seasons. As glaciers melt, as we've heard just before with Arun's presentation, water resources are massively affected. Also, catastrophic events like glacier lake outburst floods and landslides also increase, which will affect entire communities. 1.5 in this particular region limits glacier loss to about 30% by the end of this century. But under high emissions, we could see about 70% of these glaciers gone by the end of the century. Now, moving on to permafrost, which is the frozen ground, it covers about 22% of the northern hemisphere and holds vast amounts of ancient organic carbon. The more that this thaws, the more CO2 and methane is released into the atmosphere, and these emissions continue for hundreds of years once they start. And this makes it an issue of intergenerational justice. Now, today, permafrost emissions are about the same as Japan's every single year. But if we hit 1.5, we'll be seeing about the same amount as India's emissions today every single year. 2 degrees, we get to about the same as the EU. And if we go above 3 degrees, we'll be seeing the same emissions that China or the US puts out today, continuing for every single year in the future. This will be locked in. So really, we want to be avoiding this. Moving on to sea ice in the Arctic region. This is an incredibly important regulator of the Earth's temperature, and it reflects all that solar radiation, all that sunlight back out to space, which cools the planet down. But in the last 40 years, we've seen 2/3 of the volume of Arctic sea ice disappear. Now, if we do not course correct our emissions right away, by 1.7 degrees, we'll see Arctic ice-free summers every single year. And this will be like putting a radiator next to the Greenland ice sheet and all the permafrost in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, moving on to Antarctic sea ice. We normally wouldn't talk to you about this in another year, but this year has been truly extraordinary. So I took this picture myself 10 months ago when I was in Antarctica. And normally there would have been sea ice covering all that water, stretching all the way to the horizon. But Antarctic sea ice has lost in just the last 6 years what the Arctic took the last 40 years to lose. So it appears that we may be seeing a state change already at 1.2 degrees. Finally, the polar oceans, these are amazing at absorbing carbon. But the problem is, the more carbon they absorb, the more acidic they get. And in fact, the polar oceans are experiencing the highest rates of acidification anywhere on Earth. Now, this acid is dissolving the fundamental building blocks of the polar ocean ecosystems, which has huge long-term implications on fisheries. As well as this, we're seeing polar waters getting warmer, and extreme marine heat waves are already happening today and becoming more common. This is a real issue for polar species because these species have evolved for thousands of years to cope with these extremely low temperatures. And so even a small change in ocean warmth massively devastates these ecosystems. As well as this, the waters around Antarctica are the engine of the entire ocean circulation system. And observations show that this is now slowed down by a third and won't be reversed for hundreds of years into the future. Now, this is not just me speaking. So we've had over 700 cryosphere scientists signing a call to, I quote, end this insane rise in temperatures. Now, we're here at COP. We have the first global stocktake, and this has to include the physical limits placed on us by the reaction of the Earth's cryosphere to every single increment of warming above today's temperatures, let alone 1.5 degrees. Only urgent fossil fuel emission reductions can prevent what you've just seen on here and the worst of the damage. And this is simply because we can't negotiate with the melting point of ice. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. Impacts of changing cryosphere, particularly the risks, are not confined to the mountain areas alone. Obviously, they are going to impact the populations living downstream, the industry, the economy, and they're going to disrupt everything almost downstream mountains. For ICIMOD, its regional member countries are the key pillars of implementation of its program in the HKH region. Therefore, ICIMOD gives a lot of weightage to their views and opinions whenever we come up with a key finding to address some of the critical issues in the region. Here also we have some of our regional member countries joined today. And they have joined us today because they realize whatever changes happening in the cryosphere are in one or the other way going to affect their countries as well. For instance, Bangladesh being one of the riparian countries in the edge-cage countries. Among the edge-cage countries, on one side is deeply impacted by the sea level rise and ocean disasters and hazards, but it is also impacted by the erratic floods in the rivers from the upstream. To share your views, how the changes in the cryosphere is related to your country and what we need to do together, I would like to request very eminent and distinguished water expert, water and climate change expert, and the former Vice Chancellor of the Brock University, Bangladesh, for your remarks. We just want to listen from you how you will relate this study, which shows this the cryosphere is changing and is going to impact everyone, including the riparian countries, and how we can move forward together. Professor Anu Nishat from Bharat University, Bangladesh.
I should say good afternoon. It's already past 12. And thank you very much for your kind words, Baba Sahib. Think of the predicament of a Bangladeshi. He has not seen snow or ice. So when he first time sees or watches a white snow cap or observes snow is falling, he gets very excited. That happened to me and my wife when we went to Glasgow. And on the first day when the snow was falling, she came out of the house without taking warm clothes. So I had to stop her and do that. Possibly same is the reaction of a person who lives on a mountain when he gets to the sea coast and then watches the vast expanse of ocean. In Bangladesh, the rivers are very wide. 15-kilometer width is very simple and ordinary. Maybe at the coastal area, 20-25 kilometer. In the upper part, 5, 6, 10 kilometer is very easy. So that water comes from the mountains, from the Himalayas. Now, initially, everybody said, in climate change parlance, we divide the impacts into two types, rapid onset event and slow onset event. So 15, 20 years back, nobody bothered about slow onset event. Sea level rises, slow onset event, glacial mountain melting. The theory was, I've been involved with climate change negotiation for a long time. Well, it will melt in summer and get deposited in winter months. So what is the big deal about it? But now we realize what is happening. So I will quickly make 3 points. First point is about sea level rise and salinity movement in the inland. We say we have a forest, Bangladesh and India, we share jointly called Sundarbans. This is the largest mangrove forest. We also say this is an unique forest because this forest is with freshwater ecosystem. Salinity has increased. Now the entire Sundarban in Bangladesh side has the salinity that of the ocean or the sea, 39-40 ppt. So the total Sundari forest is going to change. They are going to die out. So the tidal level is also moving up. And as Babar Sahib has shown that before that, half of Bangladesh or 1/3 of Bangladesh, maybe by the end of the century, would have the salinity that of the sea. Another 1/3 would have a brackish water, which means the total change in agriculture. The southern districts already are facing this one. Rice production has been more or less stopped. The scientists in agriculture scientists are working and now have developed paddy or rice, which can tolerate a little bit of salinity up to 7, 8 ppt. Government is funding research so that they can go up to 13, 14, 15 ppt. Fish, their ecosystem, their life cycle is changing. If you want to punish a Bangladeshi, don't give him rice or fish for 1 month and he would become crazy. So that fish production is not based on the old time cycle. So the ecosystem would be changed. But think of if half of Bangladesh becomes saline or 2/3 of Bangladesh saline becomes saline. We are talking about 80, 90 million people. It's a big number. The area that is already become saline, possibly there will be 50 countries in the world have lower population than that of Bangladesh. So the low-lying deltaic area are going to suffer because sea level is going up. Why? Because the Arctic ice, North Pole, South Pole, the Himalayas, the Alps, and everywhere they are melting. So we need to understand in Bangladesh what is going to happen in the long run. The second point is in the change in hydrology. I was in Kathmandu during that meeting when I learned that the total discharge would be lower, higher, but not a big deal. But the main problem would be the change in timing. So if the snow melt starts earlier, so the pre-monsoon flood discharge would be higher. We had also together with it, rainfall characteristics is changing. This year, last year, we had biggest drought in recent history. In the peak of monsoon, there was small rainfall. Now, in Bangladeshi, people are romantic. They like songs and others. One of our famous writer is Rabindranath Tagore. And recently, I wrote a paper saying if Tagore was alive today, he would have to have changed all his poems and his songs because they are no longer valid. So that is the impact on culture. So my third point is we need to understand the discharge as well as the sediment characteristics, because higher rainfall at the beginning of the monsoon period or the rainfall period is much longer. So it would have big problem. And when you write 1.5 degree is too hot, I get scared because the way whole thing is moving, I take part in the negotiation. 3.7 was the latest prediction by IPCC 6. It is possible still to control the temperature rise within 1.5. That is a theoretical exercise. The chair of IPCC, UNFCCC, the COP28, he has created a controversy. He said, scientifically, you cannot prove that the world would maintain everything below 1.5. There's a big hue and cry. But I understand he is a practical man. So the 10 years, 15 years, 20 years back, we did not talk in terms of temperature, but in terms of the greenhouse concentration. 450. I still have a tie that was given to me that 450 ppm should be the controlling point. But what would happen when it becomes 450? It is now 420, 30. So this prediction, I hope that world would be able to control this temperature rise to 1.5. But my guess is it will go 1.2. And already this year, in many places of the earth, it was more than 1.5. So 1.2, 1.5, up to 3, maybe 4. And then the world would be able to bring it back to 1.5. In the meantime, for 30, 40, 50, 80, 60 years, I will not be there. But the younger generation would face the music. There would be food shortage. There would be severe migration. In Bangladesh, we are noticing the 3 coastal districts, the population growth rate is negative, which means they're moving out somewhere. So the glacier melt, or what is happening in cryosphere, is a very important topic for us. It is happening somewhere else, but as a Bangladeshi, we need to understand what will be the impact on our land, on our population, and we must alert the the younger generation to fight for it. That is why in the climate change negotiation, the importance of youth being involved in the negotiation is given so much importance. I agree with the recommendations that has been presented, collection of data, and reliable data, not based on emotion. With serious data, we can show that climate change is possibly the biggest threat we are going to face, not today, not tomorrow, but day after tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Anunishat, for your kind remarks. I fully agree with you. Even if the world agrees and becomes able to stop the temperature rise not beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade, obviously its impact going to continue at higher elevations, which means that the cryosphere will continue to melt, and that will further the sea level rise and its impacts both upstream and downstream. May I request Tayeb Karmaji from Bhutan? Yesterday we attended a presentation from you. It was fascinating. To please share your views about the cryosphere melt in Bhutan and its impacts for the people.
Thank you, Babaji. Since I come from the mountains, I think even with this 1.5, most of our glaciers will not survive. Why? Because what I am seeing today, I'm a field man. I'm a glaciologist by profession, so I frequently go to the field. So most of our glaciers, the equilibrium line altitude of our glaciers are way above what is expected in our region. On the average, is above 5,500 meters. So imagine the condition of 1.5, but trying to keep and stabilize at 1.5 provides us a small window of opportunity, so that when the glaciers can grows back, although it takes thousands of years, our future generations can still see the mountain glaciers during their time. So on this, I think I'll continue from where the ICIMOD presentation has ended. On the policy issues, what do you need to save the glacier? We cannot save the glacier at this current rate. A strong commitment in the emission cutter. Unless we do that, I totally agree with the ICCI. I totally agree with the ICIMOD's finding. Unless we really, our leaders, the global leaders, really commit to cutting down the emission, there is no way of saving the glaciers. As I said, 1.5 is not enough to save our glaciers. What are the consequences? Now, consequences, I don't need to highlight. Everything has been done from the Bangladeshi side, the ICIMOD side. But what are we going to talk about? It's good that the downstream part, when we talk about the glaciers, it should not be treated in silos. It has to be a regional, it has to be a transboundary issues. So that is where the organizations like ICIMOD can come in. We do have a huge data gap. We do have a lot of information lacking in the current scenario. In terms of policies, yes, I think in terms of policies regarding the environment, Bhutan is having the best environmental policies. We even go to the extent of compromising our economic growth keeping putting the environmental policies first. Nobody wants to be left behind in terms of economic development. We could have easily compromised with our environment and move ahead. But I don't know to say this, we didn't do that. So I think, and the way the things are happening in COP28, like Bangladesh said, GST is an important tax. It's an important outcome for the mountainous countries. But even to insert the word mountain in the GST tax, we are facing a lot of issues. So you may forget about everything on the adaptation, on the mitigation, on all other pillars. But fortunately, with the alliance form, with Nepal, Kyrgyzstan, and Bhutan, we are still pushing the agenda forward so that we can address the mountain issues before it is too late. We are going to reach the adaptation limit soon. So I hope with the collaboration with the international organizations and our partners, we are looking forward to seeing a good, especially the GST tax, the first of its kind that is taking place, where the mountain issues are highlighted and brought to the table for negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kama, for your kind remarks. May I apologize, Dr. Sharma. I will invite Dr. Budi Padal from Nepal because he's part of the negotiation process, and I think he has to go a bit earlier. May I request Dr. Budi for your remarks, please?
So thank you, sir. It is a great pleasure to be with you. So thank you for organizing this wonderful side event and inviting us to share our solidarity on mountain communities and mountain ecosystems. We have been working with ICIMOD in different areas, and then I actually, on behalf of the government, I would like to deeply appreciate the works of ICIMODs working for the collective, actions for 8 HKS region countries. Thank you for the presenters, and you again highlighting the impacts of changing climate and then impacts of changing cryosphere on other dimensions, we have been collaborating with particularly with Bhutan and Kyrgyzstan, and then sitting many times with ICCI, ICIMOD to prepare submissions to make interventions. That's why in negotiation also in the latest GST text, there are the mountain is mentioned in few places, but we are still, yesterday also we have submitted another text, and then James was also helping us in this journey. So I would like to thank ICIMOD, ICCI, and other colleagues having a common voice and then raising the issues of Himalaya mountain and cryosphere in the COP negotiations. So even this morning we have received another GGA text. It was there, mountain was there, and we wanted to have some indicators and targets on mountain, but in this text it is not there. We are again going to and the text is completely new, so there was a huge a disagreement from the parties, and then this morning presidency has released new text, so we are going to discuss on that at 1 p.m. and that's why I'm asking Dr. Baba to give me the floor a little bit early, and then I have to leave. So I think we share Hindu SKS region countries. We share the similar opportunities. We share the similar challenges driven by climate change, caused from natural disasters and other challenges. So ICIMOD is as a knowledge and learning center, helping us to increase the adaptive capacity, resiliency, and then so we are working together to find out, solutions that mountain communities and ecosystems are facing today. So with this, we are always together, and then we'll be together working to find better solutions. So thank you, everyone. So thank you very much. And then I have to leave now. So sorry for this. Thank you, Dr. Baba.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buddhi, for your kind remarks. We understand how busy you are, but we are really grateful that you came here. We have a representation from China also. May I request Madam Shang Chi to please come and share your remarks. You can. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, good afternoon. I'm Shang Qiu from China Meteorological Administration, the National Climate Center. And today I'm here to speak on behalf of Yongxiang Zhang, who is the chief specialist in our center. And as she received a very last minute task so that she couldn't be here in person, we really apologize for this. And I'll start now. First, please allow me to thank previous speakers for their enthusiasm and fruitful interventions today. The appreciation also gives to the ICIMOD colleagues for their excellent work and hard work. So since the mid-20th century, the rising temperature has led to intensified melting of the cryosphere, and most of the glaciers in the world has shown an accelerated trend of loss. The reduction of ice reserves has weakened the ability to ice rivers to regulate the river runoffs, and the stability of the cryosphere system has been reduced. With frequent events of the glacier surging, ice, snow, and rock collapse, and the glacial lake outburst, which has seriously affected the stability of the ecosystem. The Hindu Kush Himalaya is one of the core regions of the high mountains of Asia, and the impact of the climate change on this region is very profound and widespread. As mentioned in previous speeches, the adverse effects of the climate change on the Asian water tower will affect the freshwater reserves, which related to the survival of hundreds of millions of people in the surrounding areas. And China really attaches great importance to this area. And we have carried a lot of researches and protections activities under these neighboring countries, together with the neighboring countries, the analysis and evaluation of the long-term series glacial mass balance data by Chinese scientists also show that the representative glaciers also in the high mountain areas of Asia have been melting faster since the mid-1990s. So in 2022, the last year, the mass balance of 25 glaciers in the high mountains of Asia showed a consistent mass deficit, and the phenomenon of Karakoram anomaly may be weakening or disappearing in the future. So in order to better increase the management and protection activities in this area, the Chinese government has already made systematic deployment, and also in the future. So firstly, we would like to build the Cryosphere multi-factor comprehensive observation network, and to strengthen the research on the mechanisms of the glacial disasters, focusing on improving the forecast and evaluation abilities of the glacial disasters in many key regions. And the second one is to establish a regional climate risk big data analysis and service platform, strengthen the construction of risk early warning and prevention system and gradually form and improve a multidisciplinary and multi-departmental defense mechanism. And the last one is to strengthen the scientific and technology support of adaptive capacity building and to study the multi-layer changes and interaction mechanisms to cope with regional ecological environmental challenges. So in the end, we would like to say China really want to cooperate more closely with all the countries who have the same concerns with us on this really important issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shong, for your remarks. We really admire and like to expand our collaboration with the China being one of the very important regional member countries of ICIMOD. We are grateful for your continued support and cooperation, and we look forward to furthering our collaboration with the China Meteorological Administration and other important partners who are working on the climate change mitigation and adaptation in the region, particularly on the third pole. May I now request Ahmed Kamal Saab? Thank you, sir, for coming. For a quick remark from Pakistan, because like China, Pakistan is also one of the important member countries. Then I will request you, sir, for concluding.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. In fact, I was on another event, so I have got that. Thank you very much indeed. It is a good opportunity for me to share what we are doing and what stake we have got towards this very issue. As you know, that in 2022 we got stuck with perhaps the most severest of the flood in the history of that area, and after that we had got our first national flood protection plan, and that plan basically is also going to address the issue of gloves in the Himalayas as well, issue of gloves in our northern areas, and we intend to put in place glacial monitoring network there in order to know the melting of the glaciers and how impactful they are towards their contribution in the snow melt water that we are receiving and that we ultimately are dependent on with regard to our water storage for the rest of the 9 months, taking aside the 3 months of the monsoon from July, August, and September. Apart from that, since 2015 onwards, we are experiencing perhaps the worst ever of glacial lake outburst events in Pakistan, in the Kohistan area as well as the Chitral area. And towards that end, some preventive measures have also been proposed, and for which we are also looking for some foreign, or you can say international collaboration and all that. Very recently, we are now trying to get into a water sector as well as the allied sector data governance mechanism. Towards that, and University of Environment USA, along with Planning Commission of Pakistan, National Disaster Risk Management Fund, Ministry of Water Resources, and Ministry of Climate Change, we are joining hands together in order to see what data that the water sector needs and what data issues are on ground, and how in future the melting of the glaciers is going to impact the Indus River system, since we are dependent on the two major reservoirs, Tarbela and the Mangla, and Tarbela is the one which takes the major water supply issue, or which basically provides the major water supply issues to the entire population of the country. So that is a big question towards that end, and our partnering with ICIMOD and rest of the partners on this issue is of paramount importance for us, because what we can take from this regional, you can say, effort is to align ourselves through technology, through best coordination, and through best research practices for the time to come to avert any major loss. And then, since Babar Saab is sitting here, Mr. Shrestha is sitting here. We also are partnering in the Upper Indus Basin initiative with ICIMOD, and we have a very important stakes toward that. And taking this opportunity, may I also commit that please be assured of our fullest of contribution, fullest of backing of the efforts which ICIMOD is making, and which all the partners are collectively making towards that. I thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Ahmed Kamal is the Federal Flood Commissioner, Government of Pakistan. And that's why his talk was all around the flood. And flood is one of the biggest issues of the melting cryosphere today we are discussing. Now, may I request Dr. Eklavya Sharma from India to please share your remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babar Khan. A very good afternoon to all of you. Such a wonderful session. I come from India and I'll be talking more on the cryosphere aspects of the mountains. India is a very big country, all of you know. So my contribution here will be very much focusing on what is the status of our work related to cryosphere first, and where we are positioning ourselves. And then I'll also try to touch how India sees the regional dimension of what Dr. Khan and all others, Dr. Arun has presented. So to me, just to give a context, if you look at the Hindu Kush Himalayan region and see India, it is one of the countries who share the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. We have 86 million population in the Indian Himalayan region, which is of 240. And the area which is occupied by the Indian region in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is only 11%, and the population is 36%. That means in the mountains, there is a high population pressure already in the Indian Himalayan region. So the impact on the mountain people is very, very high. But also, if you look at the downstream, so Indian Himalayan region and the rivers which is affecting from India, not from Nepal or from other countries, China, if you just count that, 1.2 billion people in the downstream, which is a very high impact. But when I say downstream, I think in the upper Indus, as was mentioned here, so Pakistan is downstream. So population of Pakistan is also included in that. Similarly, in Brahmaputra, Bangladesh is included. So it's not just the Indians, but others also. The issue is transboundary. Whether even if we talk about Indian Himalayan region, it is not just India, it is also transboundary. We have downstream countries, but India is also upstream countries, China, of course, and we have Nepal, Bhutan, upstream. We are also depending. So in this context, we have to see really upstream, downstream relationship. Now, coming to the topic on this ice and snow, very much it was presented by Dr. Arun, and very clearly we see very highly snow and ice dependent situation arid in the west, and in the east it is more rainfall and other forms of precipitation. So that clearly shows that in our monitoring, in our research, we have to have different capacities when we talk about east and west. So we have to really see as in India very clearly into that. So what is the effort from India in terms of our work? So there are many institutions who are working on cryosphere, so especially Glaciers, now also in Globe. Those institutions are Geological Survey of India, we have Space Application Center, National Institute of Hydrology, Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, and then of course National Center for Polar and Ocean Research. All these institutions are there. My worry is good, they are doing good research on cryosphere, but the extent of the glaciers are more than 9,000. The number of glaciers which are monitored are very bare minimum, and there are very few monitoring stations in the high altitude areas. There might be some glaciers like the National Center of Polar and Ocean Research has 6 glaciers being monitored very in the long term. So there might be some good data information there, but not in the context of what we are seeing in the changes as far as the Indian Himalayan region is concerned. So for me, there is a huge data gap still when we talk about this. And this clearly shows how we are responding. And one of the responses, what happened, if you know that in 2013, in Kedarnath, in the Uttarakhand, there was a big glacial lake outburst flood, and it created about 10,000 people died. So a huge impact and so much of infrastructure. ICIMOD, we were also in the planning commission to discuss and see how we move forward. So then we have another one in Sikkim this year. So this year we had another glacier lake outburst, floods, and it's again impacting large scale population. So here comes the issue of working together, integrated approach, bringing the different disciplines together and coming with a holistic thing. So Highwise report, I very much appreciate. It's not about ice, it's about society, it's about water, it's about ecosystems. So in this context, I think the perspective of working on Cryosphere has to change, looking into the cascading effects that it has for the society downstreams and for the ecosystem downstream. So in this context, so there is a high demand, I think, from our side to have integration, very much better science in terms of monitoring and getting evidences. Now, the problem when it comes to the countries of the eight, ICIMOD report is regional, very good. People like it. They are made aware. But what happens in terms of national decisions? It is the national data, national evidences that counts. So in that context, all the eight countries, we need to really see and how our data on these subjects are also feeding into the national decision very much. So this is also something which I'm also the chairperson of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the GB Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment. So in that context, we would certainly like to bring the other topics in addition to Cryosphere in the Himalayan development. Finally, looking into some of the discussions which we have in the regional context, I think transboundary dimension is very important. Whether we work in one country or the other country, we need to have this. This is a critical, I think, experience and knowledge that we have generated over the years. The upstream, downstream impact. When we talk about Cryosphere, especially looking at the cascading impacts, then we need to have a call for collaboration. So suddenly when we call, then we have many topics. Data was mentioned, GLOF was mentioned, monitoring Cryosphere was mentioned, very much for evidence-based, but building capacities was also mentioned very importantly. So I am very happy to see that Dr. Babar Khan presented about the big assessment, putting into a call for action, and now there is a task force. They have the science forum, second one already happening, and there is going to be a ministerial talk in future. So in this context, one thing which I feel very much for our region to develop, so there are two big countries, China and India. We are two big countries, and I think we are growing economies. If we are able to contribute and help the smaller countries in the sense of having a good monitoring platform knowledge, that will be really good. So from my side, I would like to really suggest that if we are able to influence and in the science forum and then also in the ministerial context, if we are able to come along with investment for a sustainable development and related to climate change and resilience, that will be really good. So from India, we are very positive and we would like to contribute regionally also, but I think we have many challenges nationally because we are trying to work in silos in our own expertise. That is the biggest challenge which we need to, and India is big country. When we are talking about 1.4 billion people, 86 million, it is a very small number. So always population. So 86 out of 1.4 billion, that means it's a very small number. Somehow the voice of the mountains has to be stronger downstreams to really So bring mountain perspectives in policies and research in future. So ICIMOD, thank you very much for inviting us for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. It was really inspiring to hear you. And we greatly acknowledge the support that ICIMOD has been receiving from India and other regional member countries for the collaborative work. But there is a big realization that we have a long way to go together, where we can work together to address some of the critical issues that the region is facing. And one of the main issues is the rapid melting of cryosphere. When we say rapid melting of cryosphere, it's not 1%, 5%, 10%. It's melting almost 65% faster than the just previous decade. So it's really alarming. And unfortunately, the impacts and risks of the melting of cryosphere, particularly the mountain cryosphere upstream, are so complex and transboundary. Their impacts and risks are not confined to one country. They originate in one place, but cause the devastation downstream till the Arabian Sea. I'm really thankful to Gerard, our respectable guest from FCDO, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office of the Government of the United Kingdom. And this is time to invite you for your special remarks. Gerard.
Thank you, Dr. Baba. Colleagues, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come here and the opportunity to hear this extraordinary research and commitment from colleagues, and for the UK to be able to express its support for both this issue and for ICIMOD. That's extremely important. I wanted to start with some other thank yous as well, actually. I wanted to thank Jamyang for your personal commitment, and also for underscoring the urgency of the crisis and the human face of this crisis, and connecting people with the crisis through your work with schools and your engagement with communities. We respect and honour that, and thank you very much indeed. I also want to thank our colleague from China's Meteorological Office for reminding us, as we saw in the photograph from the Policy Forum in Kathmandu, that this is an issue on which both women and men are equally engaged. We've had a slight imbalance in the panel today, but we recognise this is something that is across the piece. So thank you, ICIMOD, for bringing us together. And we stand absolutely united in our determination to protect this fragile and precious region, often known as the Third Pole. And it's the part of the world too often overlooked when we consider the impacts of climate change, and those impacts that you've been showing us so starkly today, risking the lives and livelihoods of 2 billion people who rely on it, and threatening to destroy a wealth of biodiversity. So I want to just reinforce, and my Minister Andrew Mitchell wanted to come today and apologises for not being able to be here today, but wanted to reinforce the fact that the UK hears the call of the cryosphere and the regions and the countries that surround it with you. And we are uniting with you, our friends from the region and our partners in ICIMOD, to respond. I wanted to just touch on a couple of areas. First, and we've heard this really clearly today from a range of colleagues, Professor Nishat and from James, we have to do all that we can to reduce emissions of carbon into the atmosphere. That is unequivocally the case. We face catastrophe. We have locked in impact. We have to bend that curve. And the UK is doing its part and all it can to boost climate finance internationally through our net zero commitments at home, and to look at both increasing the quantity and the quality of climate finance. That includes our own pledge to spend just under £12 billion in international climate finance over the next 5 years, and to push for access to simpler and better access to climate finance for the most vulnerable countries, including through our seat on the Green Climate Fund and our work with the World Bank and other multilateral development banks. And I would just like to point out that we published a development white paper on the 20th of November this year, and to thank ICIMOD, because within that white paper, we actually use HiWise research. We reference HiWise research on glacial melt when we point out to the scale of the problem. So If ICIMOD and Highwise just want a little reassurance that their work is finding its way into policy, I can point you to that. It's footnote number 65 for those of you who want to read the report. And we committed at Glasgow to tripling our own adaptation finance. And a significant part of that adaptation finance is the programme in which ICIMOD sits, which is our climate action for a resilient Asia, funding ICIMOD's work in Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and India. And one of the really exciting fruits of that partnership is work helping communities in Nepal to map springs that have dried up due to climate change and earthquakes and bring those back to life again. Really working with nature-based solutions that are community relevant to use a combination of new recharge ponds and trenches while introducing the right plants in the right places to remove invasive species. And ICIMOD's work with governments and communities in Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal will scale up this work. And with further research by ICIMOD, we can identify nature-based solutions at scale, and scale is so important, as we all know at this point. And indeed, in our white paper, the UK is committed to funding research into nature-based solutions for climate resilience and unlocking public and private financing for those solutions. One of the ways that we'll do that is supporting the growth of high-integrity carbon and nature markets that can unlock a globally estimated $40 billion of private finance for low and middle-income countries. We have to get money moving behind nature-based solutions because otherwise we will not get to where we need to be. So we are really delighted to hear about the cooperation in the Hindu Kush that we've heard today. And all of that is why the UK wants to underscore and raise global awareness of ICIMOD's Mountains of Opportunity investment framework. And so we're calling upon businesses and banks and our partners, governments and development finance institutions, civil society and philanthropists to join all of our efforts here today to respond to the call of the cryosphere, to recognise the urgency. We need to remain architects of hope as well as staring into the abyss and manage both of those at the same time. And so that we can join the Mountains of Opportunity Investor Alliance, which is so key to delivering the life-changing investments and the progress for the most vulnerable people at the scale and the pace required. It will take commitment, it will take energy and an enormous effort. But I want to pay tribute to the people in this room and their communities, scientific and otherwise, that are behind this effort and underscore our commitment to join you in it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Gerard. Thank you so much. A very comprehensive and encouraging remarks. We are grateful to the UK government's Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office for the support ICIMOD is receiving for the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Building Program as part of the CARA initiative. We call it Hindu Himalaya Resilience Enabling Action Program, working in the 5 countries of the region. As I said earlier, what are we doing is still a small fraction compared to the challenge and the vulnerability the HKH region is facing. So we are quite hopeful that together with our regional member countries and the international development partners, we will be able to go forward hand in hand and try to find the resources and investments both from the public as well as the private sector to address some of these issues and challenges the region is facing. With this, we now reach to the end of the program. Before disembarking, may I request our distinguished guests to please assemble here for a group photo, and then I will pay the vote of thanks.